We are getting closer and closer to finding the ideal four-rotor. We have taken what we originally had, and we're working on making that even better. This video is not about that. That's an R&D path. This is what exists right now. The Billet Pro billet engine, and I think that there are some amazing benefits to this approach as well. And so we're gonna be testing this in comparison, but our goal right now is to build a nasty, lightweight, high power, high revving, efficient four-rotor, and that's where I think these plates come into play. So what we're gonna be doing in this video is comparing these weight-wise to stock plates. There's a massive weight savings, and for somebody like you that might be interested in someday building a four-rotor, why this plate with this little replaceable piece inside here is actually a pretty big advantage. Enjoy, watch me get really nerdy. All I care about is just making four-rotors more accessible to everybody else, and I think Billet Pro is on that path. Even if I didn't care what was in here, at least I free up more floor space with taking this pallet out. That's the most negative thing I could say about this moment right now. Billet Pro, so Simon for ProMaz. I've worked with ProMaz for a long time indirectly. The four-rotor's bell housing, one of the safest parts of this car, was built by Simon years ago. That is one massive chunk of steel that they carved out. Very heavy, very, very strong. I definitely trust their machining work. Obviously, I'm still a novice when it comes to this sort of stuff. I want to see what's in here. Oh shit. I think he told me there was a code to these.
I remember it. You don't remember it?
I don't remember it.
Should I say it?
Yeah, say it.
268.
Wow, how did you remember that?
Because it's 26B.
Oh man, good call. This is actually Joel's engine now.
I knew working here would pay off one day.
This is the moment of truth. You can't unopen Pandora's box, so I thought it'd be a fully assembled engine, but whatever. I guess this plate is the
What's the center?
Premium Performance Products. I definitely would agree with the word premium. Oh, Jesus. You can't deny that. That is absolutely beautiful finish. This obviously massively differentiates from our style for a variety of reasons. It is much lighter. The weirdest looking thing is this right here.
Yeah.
And we will get into that in a moment. But you can also tell it there's that inner race. That is where we have to make a piece this wide to then fit our ball bearing in the center there. That's a lot thicker of a steel insert than I thought. Quite literally, figuratively, emotionally, the center of it all. On a traditional rotary engine, that's where all the oil goes through, the dowel hole. This can either be an oil pass-through or just a straight up block or feed straight to the center bearing. This is very fucking well thought out. I know enough to know that this is a very complex path right there. And I don't mean complex as in like hard to do. It just requires you to do it from a different angle, because if you come just from this side, which this plate was machined this way with one long cutter to get this nice surface here, then you cut it with a ball end here. Well, there's multiple operations done on this piece. I'm very jealous of what I've already got. The negative is this makes my own work look like child's play. But then again, I make my own work look like child's play. Massive positive about this setup. It's already ported. You could port it more, but this is a standard Cosmo port, and we'll compare it to our ports. It's very rare you get to see me this amped up for something like this, but it's because of you guys this is even possible. And we have restocked the hoodie. Cindy did an amazing job designing this. This is restocked for basically the last time. And so the hoodies are on sale, and then we have a box of all of the last bit of stuff. Everything you see here, the zip-up hoodies, the Fighting on Rotors hoodies, there's only a handful of these left. They're like small, 2XL, 3XL, whatever's on the site is what we have, and these are all marked down, mostly so we can get the space back. So you benefit, we benefit, life is good, but we have all the other shirts restocked. They're taking up space for my wiring. Well, I can't wire unless you help make space.
For the 12 rotor, right?
It's all for the 12 rotor, yeah. And as you guys know, anything that we do with merch always goes back into the absolute obsession that is going on here, and so I appreciate what you do. DahmRacing.com, you've got the CAD shirts, red shirts, all sizes. The best part is it is going out today. Erica will be here to help package orders today and tomorrow. So the first 2 days, they will ship out immediately. So this is the plate that one is replacing. And this is as much as I can do pound for pound. It doesn't have the bearing inside of there, so it's an accurate comparison. We're talking 21 pounds, 11 ounces. Well, 19 pounds, 4 ounces, 2.2 pounds less. When you pick them up, you can feel that 2 pound difference. And that just shaved 2 pounds out of our motor that quickly, probably for each plate. Let's take a look at these plates. This is tungsten carbide. This is basically cast iron, screwed in and held in from the center. And then of course with the rotor on there, it's also holding it in as well. And there's O-rings that I want to show you guys in there. That's the argument, is which style is better. This style has a lot of benefits because guess what? This one's broken. Can't fix it quickly. You can just replace this plate here. The biggest concern I have is the doweling here. As you can see on our plates, which are 5000 series, you can see where I've taken a stone and found the raised parts, and you can actually see them. Look in the vectors here of what happens when you either A, have tons of power all the time, or B, a very significant detonation event. Either way, it shows you an accelerated process of where forces are applied. My concern is that with this landing being thinner, this very edge of this material I expect under a detonation moment to be deformed, like ours, because look, there's a seal there. So this lip is going to get deformed no matter what. The nature of the rotary engine, I think. But when you measure this plate, very center of it is circular. So it's something where it's almost like a rubber band or a bow where it bends like this. But because it's stronger metal, I actually believe that it might be better, even with it being thinner. We're gonna unbox the whole engine first and then go into the science behind why their plates work so well. So it looks very similar. That's why these are easy to build, relatively speaking. Let's look at all that bearing support right there. And then it's got right under here, I can see it, the oil pours out of, the oil comes in right here. Now this is a really nice contraption here, honestly, is that you can either direct feed it or feed it through the traditional route. We're using solid dowels, so we'll feed the oil bearings the way we always have, but I think this might give us a consistency for that bar, so like an oil rail.
Oh, sick.
This is one of the two. It looks like it's kind of centered where you could choose either one. That's very smart on their part, where you put the bearing one way or the other and you build the same plate. This is a big part of what makes a four rotor a four rotor. One of the things you might notice immediately is that all the ports are the same size. This is considered the Cosmo port. That's a very tall, wide, big port. I guess this could go on either side of this center one. Those are the easy plates to build. That's why we were starting with that plate, because that's also the easiest plate, which is this, but also the one that doesn't exist. Front and rear plates you can always buy from Mazda and modify. This you have to make from scratch, and Jeff Bruce is one of the pioneers on that. This will be very interesting because this is something that I do not have the ability to build. Whoa. There you go. There's the front, and very fascinating side. Yeah, it's beautiful. This might be where it really benefits us over my current hybrid engine. So let's compare the weight of this. So 15 pounds, 11 ounces. One thing that this does have is the bearing. So that adds probably a pound. 25 pounds. So we shed 10 pounds. We'll say 9 pounds because the gear. That's 10 pounds that you just don't need anymore. Straight up weight savings. So this is the other really fascinating piece. This is the rear. There you go. Yet another incredible piece. This will touch Billet Pro's rear steel bell housing. It's also so damn light. You just see that, like, mass-wise, you can spin it around really quick. That's one of my easiest ways to tell it. Clean, already all tapped holes. We have our own little baby plate there. Temperature hole right there. That is nice. Let's weigh this one as well. 18 pounds, 9 ounces, 32 pounds. Again, I'm gonna add a pound for this. We'll even add a pound for each of these. You're not touching the full billet weight. We'll do it off camera. We'll get the exact numbers, but we're talking at least 20 pound savings already just going full billet motor. It doesn't become a four rotor until you have bolts and gears. Those are the two last, like, very necessary things. Simon sold me his, I think, half-inch stud kit. With this tightly fit to your plates and tightly fit to your housings, these could work as miniature dowel bolts. High quality, 12 point. They are much bigger than stock bolts that you'd be used to. This should be tight fit here. That's nice. Maybe 2/1000ths, 1/1000th and a half. It's not 1/1000th, 2 to 4 thousandths. I'm not an expert on this, but I'm just pointing out that that's exactly where you want to be. I genuinely know from experience. Too tight and then you have problems. Too loose and the engine's bending without even interfering with the plates, and the plates aren't doing their jobs. I feel like I still want to put my dowels bolts in here. We'll review how much material we have left. Regardless, we could make it easier if we just keep them this way and not detonate the motor, but that depends on the housings. The fat threads go on the front plate, so those are the threads you don't see. These are the threads that you actually end up torquing. The way a stud works is that you don't tighten these, you get them like hand tight. And you're torquing to the finer thread. The final piece of this puzzle That is the gears. This is a very interesting part of a rotary engine. The fact that the rotors actually ride on these internally and externally. These are stat gears. Now these are custom made for Billet Pro. These will not work on a different plate setup unless they were designed with Billet Pro plates in mind. But you recognize this side and you recognize the center. That's 93 FD type bearing. And then that is a heat treated stat gear. There's a little set screw to hold the bearing from spinning. And then there's a nice feed. Oh, it even has an angle. Interesting, they machined that into this. And then this is the flange that holds it into a Billet Pro piece. It really is centered off of this right here. These just hold it into place this way. And as a result, prevent it from trying to walk out. That's actually really light too. One of the biggest challenges to four rotors has always been these two irons here. Well, they're known as irons, but these are aluminums. Every single rotor, these lobes, needs a bearing next to it. And on a two rotor, that's really simple. It's the outer two. They both point towards the center, a bearing and a gear, and the two rotors spin happily against those and get oil and life is good. These were never a piece of Mazda sellable rotary engine technologies. That the way they did it on their 787 is totally different than the consumer version of the four rotor. And in fact, the consumer version is quite frankly better than the 787, my personal opinion. If you bought an engine 10 years ago, you had to have somebody like Jeff Bruce modify stock pieces and they would eventually crack over time when you pushed it too hard. This and this solve that. It's machined and built to hold a bearing inside of it. There's the bearing for this rotor, there's the bearing for this rotor, there's the bearing for this rotor, and so on. And so it always goes inward. Bearing, rotor, bearing, rotor. This engine specifically is having a bearing in the very center of the motor. So that's this race right here. And that's ball bearing. The vast majority of four rotors use this style of E-shaft. And there's the four outer bearings, four rotors, but then the center one, that's a two rotor E-shaft right there. Not exactly, but you get the idea, is that that center part is not a bearing, it's just extra material. The Billet Pro billet irons lets you go either way with that center part. This will fit. Oh shit, doesn't fit. What about the other side, right? Doesn't look good. That's where ProMaz came up with this. So look at the plates lifting up, which is a really fascinating way about this rotational mechanism.
That's sick.
Because it does not make sense when you look at it at first. And there you go. This is different than the 12 rotor in the respect that it is held in at this very center. You can't just buy the chunk of steel and put it in this place. Because
Whoa, that's crazy.
it's also threaded on the inside of this. So you see how there's uneven number of threads between this? You probably have to spin it onto here one or two revolutions, but this is incredible. It's threaded in a way that it holds these two pieces together. So there's the threading on here, on the aluminum, and there's a threading on the inside of this here. So this is where user error can become a very big problem. I felt that, and I want to point that out as well. The 12 rotor does not have this, nor did it need it really, but you can see this is separating the air and fuel from the coolant. Coolant is filling this whole section. So if you want to be really technical, this engine will weigh more than it did because all of this extra space will now be water. Same thing here. This is actually separating coolant from your oil. Oil comes out of this bearing through these sleeves right here. So you can see that? So that's where the oil will leak down on both sides, depending on the bearing, and then it comes down out this butthole. So while that was massively cool and beautiful, that still wasn't why I took that apart. That's how you install this bearing. There is a set screw. This one was probably meant for this side. That's this here, but ignore that for a second. Obviously, you have to put it in the right way because you have an opposite one that you could mess up. I'm not even gonna try to press this in because it's obviously not the correct setup, but feel that, just feel that emotionally through the sound.
I was like, what?
Yeah, I truly mean that, is that you can just feel that it's tight. That has to be fucking tight. If the bearing walks, the rotor walks. At the end of the day, the E-shaft and the rotor, 4 thousandths here, plus 4 thousandths here, what you're talking about is a potential movement of 8 thousandths if everything's on versus everything off. Take that a step further. If this can move, now you also have this moving, which means that you crash into corners, you have the rotor capable of rotating and doing all crazy shit. That is not good. So that's why this is so tight, because this is actually centering this and, for the most part, holding it from walking. The biggest problem you can have, and my buddy Todd had this issue on his when it was being assembled overseas, is that this can get pinched. And now you can get coolant going into your intake. Your engine's not blown, but you sure as shit are gonna have to rebuild it. In Todd's case, he actually has this plate with no port cut, because his is full peripheral. His air doesn't come in from the sides, it comes in from the peripheral. Water was going into this port, so he just blocked this off here because he didn't feel like dealing with it. I would probably on these use like Hylamar. I think that this is probably a part that either A, you have to massage, get that right, and then if you have it both, so right there, see how I'm doing that? That could pop those O-rings out. So if ProMaz designed this as well as I think they did, you should be able to just set it that way, and they have slop on both sets of threads to let you have not misthreaded but threaded it once or twice too many. But there you go.
That was pretty nice.
Yeah, that was pretty straightforward. The benefit being that, oh man, I scored this because I didn't clearance my rotors far enough, and I detonated it on the rotor, and when the rotor detonates, the pocket widens and it hits this. The idea is that you take this plate out and then put a new plate in.
Cool thing about that is you can have them on deck too, so you don't have to wait.
Yeah, right now we're experiencing exactly the problem that we were worried about, is who thermally lava sprays tungsten chromium carbide? That's aerospace bullshit. Nobody has time for us. This is the rear bearing, and this is like iconically always the big one. That pretty much looks like Mazda.
Yeah, it looks like Mazda to me.
They look heat treated the same way that their own gears are, so I wonder if they put it through a process or something like that. This is front stack gears, so then that means that this one's probably Mazda as well. They modified it. This looks stock at first, but then this looks modified for countersunk bolts. You have all this, you spend the money, you get the beautiful blingy functional parts. This is one of the very first times in rotary history where you could actually spend money and get 85% of the way straight. Like, you could probably put this together as is with your E-shaft, balance it, and then run it and not ever see a problem. We're gonna be assembling this motor as well as Hertz motor at the same time. So you're gonna see no expense spared, every brand new part, proper engine, and the cost of that. And then you're gonna see what's the least that you can do a good 1,000 horsepower plus four rotor for, and how realistic is that, and what does it take? There you go. There is the Billet Pro billet plates, and my God, the bar has been set pretty damn high.